Welcome back to another edition of the Penn State 365 podcast. I'm your host, Richie O'Leary, joined as always when we're talking Penn State football recruiting, and just Penn State in general, I guess. My co-host, Dylan Callahan-Crawley of Happy Valley Insider. Dylan, another week, another win for Penn State.
Yeah.
It wasn't the prettiest start, but they turned it around pretty quickly and ended up pretty much dominating UCLA for the rest of the game. I guess, what are your just kind of high-level thoughts on this one?
Yeah, sorry, cut out there for a second, but I got it where you were going this. Yeah, Penn State, they definitely slept walk early in that game, and then they kind of woke up, I think, as, that first half progressed, and after that, they took care of business. I mean, was it the smoothest effort? No. Could they have beaten that UCLA team by much more? Absolutely. But overall, I mean, they beat UCLA. They really beat UCLA 27-3. That last touchdown for the Bruins came in the final minute against, Penn State's depth pieces, second team guys, third team guys. So I mean, I think if you're Penn State, you look around college football. College football is not an easy place. College football is not easy to win week in and week out. We saw that this week. That's why Penn State's now number 4 in the country, which, they can have been rewarded for going in and winning week in and week out so far, which, as we have seen, is clearly not something that's easy to do. I mean, Alabama just lost to Vanderbilt. I mean, Vanderbilt's an improved team, but this is Vanderbilt team that lost to Georgia State a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
I mean, it's not easy. Arkansas defeats Tennessee. Cal took Miami down the wire, and if it wasn't for a bad call, they may beat Miami. I mean, we saw 3 or 4 top 10 SEC teams go down this week. We almost saw Miami go down, and it wasn't smooth as an effort for Penn State, but it doesn't always have to be smooth. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is what's in the win column or the loss column, and right now it's 5 wins for Penn State and no losses. They keep going 1-0 every week. Now the schedule is going to pick up here this week, and that's going to be big for them. But if they take care of business against USC in Los Angeles this week, they're a lock for being the number 3 team in the country going into next week as long as they win, because either Ohio State or Oregon is going to fall after this week. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens this weekend in Los Angeles, but. Penn State has done a very good job this year of being 1-0 each week, and we'll see if that continues here against the Trojans.
I do want to kind of talk about these slow starts, because it wasn't just on offense, it was the defense as well. I mean, back-to-back punts to start on offense, but then if you go to the flip side, UCLA gets the ball with 7:05 left in the first, and they pretty much drive down the field, not easily, but with a backup quarterback, mind you. A team that's not very good on offense has had this season alone has been brutal, and they get down the field in 11 plays, 46 yards, and obviously turn it over on downs. But it's a 6-minute drive. Like that's got to be a little bit concerning for a UCLA team that's not good versus a Penn State defense that it's always that bend don't break mentality. But this season at least, and it's just been a lot of bend. It seemed like.
There's definitely been a lot of bend early on, but I think as the stats would show, as the game progresses on, Penn State gets way better on defense. I mean, they allowed 154 yards in this game in the first half. UCLA ended up at 260. 115 of those came in the fourth quarter, and 73 of those yards came on UCLA's last drive of the game, which took 8 minutes off the clock. There's been a lot of bend and don't break. They cannot get off to these slow starts against the likes of USC this week or Ohio State in a few weeks. Yeah. But against these other opponents, you're going to survive them. But, definitely need to get off to a faster start defensively. They had that long streak of not giving up a touchdown to start a game for 30-ish games, I think it was. Illinois broke that. Bowling Green broke that. Illinois then scored a couple weeks ago, and UCLA almost did this. Let me look at that first drive. They almost. They got to just outside the red zone. It definitely is something that we'll have to improve. They'll have to get off to quicker starts there, but I think what's more important is the adjustments that have been made at halftime so far this season, which have been phenomenal. Penn State has been tremendous in the third quarter and fourth quarter this season. I think they allowed, after this week, 17 points total in the third and fourth quarter, and only 9 of those really have come with the first team defense on the field.
Yeah. Going back to the offense, I don't even want to really talk much about Drew because Drew just had a very solid game. There's not really much else to say. But the running game, Katron Allen, no Nick Singleton. Katron Allen took the bulk of the carries. And then we saw a little bit of Quentin Martin as well. I know he only had 1 carry, but he also had 3 receptions. We always knew he had that pass-catching ability. I think that, like, without Nick back there, is it a little bit of a concern without Nick being back there and everything, I should say? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah, I definitely think this Penn State rushing attack is much different when they have Katron Allen compared to when they have Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. Allen, very good running back, but doesn't have that burst that Singleton obviously has. I think Allen really is best as a change of pace running back. I think that's what he's going to be at the NFL level. Let's be honest, between these two backs, Singleton's going to be the one who has the chance to be the star at the NFL level, and Allen's going to be that really good rotational running back. He's going to get a couple carries a game, and he's going to make the most of those as a change of pace guy. But when Allen is the go-to guy for Penn State, the rushing attack doesn't have that same oomph to it, I guess you could say. And they're going to need that going forward. I think Singleton not playing this past week against UCLA really shouldn't be read into much. I think it's just bumps and bruises for him. I expect him, as does James Franklin, I expect him to play against USC. And if he plays against USC, this is going to be a very tough game for USC to win. The Trojans cannot stop good rushing attacks. We've seen that. Lincoln Riley, as just said after this week's loss for USC to Minnesota, we're 2 plays away from being undefeated. Well, at the end of the day, also, you're not. You have 2 losses in the loss column. You have a 2 in the loss column right now, and against 2 really good rushing attacks, you have given up a ton of yardage. There was I also helped cover Minnesota, and we posted a story on our Twitter page, and a USC fan came and said, this is a little bit misleading. USC was very good against the run against Michigan outside of 6 carries, whatever it was. But again, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it was just 4 to 6 carries. You couldn't stop them throughout the game. They could not pass the ball in the game, and you still let them run for 300 yards. It was exactly what happened to Penn State last year. And the USC defense is improved, but I don't think they're going to be able to stop this Penn State rushing attack this week if Nicholas Singleton is ready to go. Because the lines of scrimmage are not good for USC, so it'll be big for Penn State to get him back this week, and it's going to be big to keep him healthy going forward. If it is bumps and bruises, it's just he's going to have to fight through them against USC, and then you got that bye week coming up, which I think will be big for Penn State, who really needs to get healthy because compared to the rest of the Big Ten, they're definitely one of the more beat up teams so far this season.
Yeah, and I'll talk more about USC in a minute, but
which makes, going back to it, the winning week in, week out thing even more impressive. Penn State is one of the most beat up, probably top 25 teams in the country. And outside of 2 quarters against Bowling Green, they've really been the better team throughout the entire season.
Yeah, and we'll get more to USC a little bit later on in the show, but I do want to keep talking about this rushing attack because there's no Cam Wallace now, so now Quentin Martin has to step up. I know he only had 1 carry, but are you confident in Katron Allen and Quentin Martin as the running back room if Nick Singleton can't go? Because we know Wallace is out long term.
I mean, I'm confident in them being able to get yardage, but I don't think it's going to be an explosive rushing attack like we saw through the first 4 games of the season from Penn State. It's just not going to have that same level until Martin really gets the traction going. James Franklin talked about coming into last week. You want to play Quentin Martin. If you play Quentin Martin, you want to make sure he gets enough reps to make it worth it. Now he got reps on special teams too, but 1 carry, is that really worth him playing that game offensively. I mean, he played special teams, so it is what it is. But
3 catches.
it's hard to say. It's hard to say about. Sorry, it's hard to say about Quinn Martin because he really just hasn't had that opportunity yet to to show what he can do on a week in and week out basis.
Yeah. Wide receiver room. We saw Liam Clifford with not one, but multiple big catches, including that 57-yard bomb, which I thought he was actually going to break off and get a touchdown on. And we saw a little bit of Harrison Wallace. We obviously saw Tyler Warren break the tight end touchdown record at Penn State all time. For career touchdowns all time for a tight end. I should have said that backwards. What do we think? Is Liam Clifford here to stay as like a wide receiver 1 type? Or is this just like a one-off type thing, or maybe just not consistent enough?
Yeah, I'm not ready to call him a wide receiver 1. I think he could become a consistent contributor to this Penn State receiving attack, passing attack, and they're going to need him to be. If they're gonna go through this season undefeated, they're going to need more than just Harrison Wallace and Amari Evans to step up. And I didn't think it was a great game for the Penn State wide receivers as a whole. Amari Evans dropped a pass. Julian Fleming dropped a pass. You got to catch those balls. I mean, Drew was, after a shaky performance at times against Illinois, I thought, Drew did exactly what he had to do against UCLA. He came out and played a very efficient game, and Penn State was effective through the air when they had to be. But yeah, I mean, if Liam can continue, if this could be like a stepping stone for Liam, and he can be now a consistent threat in the passing game, that's going to be big for Penn State. And he showed it, I think, a little bit against Illinois, if my memory is correct. So it's big for Penn State for him to get going.
Mm-hmm. The drops are killing me. And I don't want to say it's all on Amari Evans specifically, but there's just been a lot of wide receiver drops. It seems like over the past couple weeks, Amari Evans, and I love Amari Evans. I think he has so much talent. I think he's a speedster. I think he might actually be the fastest guy on the team when it's all said and done. But he's just dropped so many passes at this point. Also, Julian Fleming, like you mentioned, we did see a little bit of him this weekend. This close to getting his first touchdown, and I feel like it would have meant so much more to have that first touchdown in Happy Valley, being a PA guy, all the PA, Pennsylvania, blah blah blah. The story writes itself every week because they always talk about it. Transferred home, highly ranked kid, but this close to having it. Does it? I guess that's really all I got for the wide receiver room. But the tight end room, Tyler Warren, he's got to be the front runner for best tight end in the nation, right? You're on mute again. You're on mute.
The pains of having an 8-week-old. Yeah, I think Warren has to be the front runner for the Mackey Award now through 6 weeks of the season. And I will say, go back to Quinn Martin. He only had that 1 carry, but he did have 3 receptions in the game for 18 yards, showing his versatility in the game. That's going to be big for Penn State as well going forward if Singleton can't. If Singleton ever does miss time. Because having a big part of Singleton's game is being able to be that guy out of the backfield. So if he can, maybe not necessarily replace Singleton on the ground, but if he's able to do it, through the air like that, that's big for Penn State. But yeah, Tyler Warren is a special tight end. You think about all the tight ends Penn State produced over the last decade, and it's amazing that he's the best one. I think they and you're talking guys like Pat Fryman, Mike Gesicki, guys who've been in the league for years now. Pat Fryman just got a huge contract extension this offseason from Steelers, and Tyler Warren. I mean, if he continues to play like this and then he performs well at the combine, he's going to have an opportunity to go in the first round,
which is crazy to say. And I know tight ends don't normally. I guess they do once in a while. Like Brock Bowers was a first rounder, right?
And I think he's not as freakish as Brock Bowers.
Kyle Pitts and Brock Bowers. He's a different build.
Yeah, they're a little bit more freakish, but Warren is, I think,
all around.
All around. I mean, just so good. Here, give me 1 minute.
Yeah, you're good. Penn State's defense, like we said before, kind of a slow start. They gave up that 11-play, 6.5 minute drive to start the game, but bounced back completely. Shut everything down from that UCLA Bruins offense last week. That's just Tom Allen being a very good in-game adjustment guy. Still hate the bend don't break, but that's just my opinion. Zakee Wheatley, very active early on. Very, very active. Love to see that from him. Playing a little bit up from that safety position, more in the box, which is always nice to see. He's got that, I guess you could call it position versatility, so to speak. But Tony Rojas, just a straight-up football guy, as Gus Johnson called him. I guess he made reference to Ted Lasso, obviously, in that one little comment. But Tony Rojas led the team in tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 3 pass breakups, 4 quarterback hurries, and only 2 sacks, which is slightly disappointing, I feel like, because I feel like with the defensive line unit that you have between Carter, between Denai Dennis Sutton, you should be getting more sacks than Zane Durant. Like they have a lot of guys back there that can rush the passer. There should be producing more sacks, in my opinion, but maybe that's just me.
No, I mean, definitely should. I mean, Denai Dennis
He's a little more mobile, too, so it's...
Denai Dennis Sutton, I mean, has all the talent in the world, but it's kind of like the Odafe Owe thing at this point.
Yeah,
all that
very
talent,
similar.
No production, at least in the sack category. But also, I think, even in the turnover category, it hasn't been big for Penn State this year. It's just going... Manny Diaz's defense was so focused around creating chaos that Penn State's not creating nearly that same amount of chaos this year, and it's noticeable. They're still being successful, but the level of chaos created has not nearly been the same. And I think if you go look at the stats, that chaos has translated well for Diaz down to Duke as well. I think they're amongst the top teams in the country in sacks this year. It's just not the same style of defense for Tom Allen. Obviously, every defensive coordinator wants to create chaos, but also, I think, as Shane Franklin has said, and I don't think it's an excuse, I think it is very valid, offenses have been working on getting the ball out quickly this season against Penn State to try to neutralize that pass rush. And we saw that with UCLA this week. I mean, I think also part of the defense this week at UCLA is Justin Martin. Nobody really knew what Justin Martin would bring to the table. He had, 4 or 5 pass attempts before this week. And he was impressive. I thought he was really impressive, all things considered, against a really good Penn State defense. And he was able to move the ball. I think they found themselves a quarterback there. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him be the starter even when Chase Garbers is healthy. Ethan Garbers is healthy. So, yeah, I think it's... Yeah. I think once they, got some tape on Martin, they figured out how UCLA was going to use Martin in the pass attack, what they were going to try to do. Penn State's defense adjusted and did really well. Because you look at it, UCLA stats by quarter, they had 72 yards in the first, 82 yards in the second, and then -9 in the third, and then until UCLA's 8-minute drive in the fourth quarter against Penn State's second-team defense, they had about 40 yards in that fourth quarter. You're not going to keep every opponent every week to, less than 250 yards. And UCLA hasn't been great offensively this year, but overall, I don't think you take too many negatives away from what Penn State was able to do in this game.
No, not at all. Let's look ahead. Let's look at the USC matchup. You mentioned it before. They haven't been able to stop anything from the running attack from opposing teams. Darius Taylor, 25 for 144. No scores, surprisingly. Brosmer ran in 3 on his own, though.
Yeah, all from within 3 yards.
Then Khalil Mullings and Donovan Edwards combined for, what am I looking at? 31 carries for 133 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's 6.3 yards per carry for Michigan's team, and then 4.8 yards per carry for Minnesota's team. Do we just assume that they're not going to be able to... If they can't stop those guys, and I like Darius Taylor, I think he's very good. Nick Singleton's fully healthy. I think Nick Singleton eclipses 100, and I think there's a chance Katron Allen could go for 80 to 100 as well.
Yeah, going Darius Taylor quickly. Yeah, fantastic running back. One of the best in the Big Ten. One of the best in the Big Ten in the country. Really, I think overlooked because he plays at Minnesota. And by the way, that Minnesota game later this season, I don't think this Minnesota team is great. I think they're I think they are a very quality team, and they're a scrappy team. That's going to be a tough game for Penn State to go to in November. But yeah, USC's run defense, I mean, you look at it, and to me, it's not even just a yard story, because Wisconsin had only 106 yards, but 4.2 yards per carry. LSU 4.5 yards per carry. Even Utah State had 3.8 yards per carry. I mean, the magic number is what, 3.4 yards per carry? Three carries gets you a first down. I mean, they're almost giving up
first down.
They are now getting up 5 yards per carry, but most of these games 4.2, 4.5, 4.8. They're getting up 4-point-ish yards per carry on for the most part, and I think this Penn State rushing attack is much more similar to the level of Michigan's than Minnesota's. Nothing against Minnesota, again, very good rushing attack, but this USC team has no push up front defensively against strong offensive lines. And while that Minnesota offensive line is good, it's not great. I mean, it's not one that I think Penn State's defensive line is going to get pushed around by. I think Penn State, if you're Penn State in this game, I think you try to run the ball down USC's throat as much as possible, and then get them off balance and attack them through the air. Because, I mean, it is an improved defense, but still allowed 67.2% of their passes to be completed this season. And you look against two veteran quarterbacks in Garrett Nussmeier at LSU and then Max Brosmer at Minnesota. Brosmer not a elite quarterback, but veteran guy. He's been around the FCS for a while. Came to Minnesota this year. Brosmer had a 78.9% completion percentage this week. Nussmeier had a 76.3% completion percentage in week 1. I mean, this is still a USC defense that, while improved, they're not as improved as I think a lot of people think they are. They're giving up almost 5.6. They are giving up 5.6 yards per play this season, and in their, they give up 6.1 yards per play to Minnesota this week, 6.6 yards per play to LSU, 5.6 to Michigan and Wisconsin. I mean, they lost that Wisconsin game mostly because Wisconsin doesn't have the playmakers to, make it work, nor the quarterback. As much as Lincoln Riley, said we're 2 plays away from being undefeated, I think you can argue that they're a couple plays away from being, 2-3 right now too. So this USC defense is improved, but they're still, I think, a year or two away from really taking that step of where they want to be defensively.
Yeah, 100%. And we'll have more on USC this upcoming week. We're going to have a full preview. Hopefully one of the analysts from the USC Rivals site will be joining us.
Yes.
I'm not sure which guy yet, but we're in talks with them to figure out a preview show. That's probably going to be Wednesday or Thursday. But really, that's all we really got for this week. We'll have more with some recruit scoop later on this week as well. Yep. As they hosted several committed prospects committed elsewhere.
Including 2 in-state guys this week.
Yeah, like Cyrus, South Carolina, Bradley Gompers, Duke, and then also Brandon Finney committed to Oregon from Maryland, and then who am I missing?
Josh Johnson.
Yes, Louisville commit from Ohio. So.
Penn State staying active in the secondary and following Antonio Branch's decommitment a couple weeks ago. They're really, going to, I think, attack that position group going forward the remainder of the cycle here.
Yeah, so stay tuned for all that and more. We'll have more on HappyValleyInsider.com. Of course, join the Lions Den forum. The most premier talk when it comes to Penn State athletics, Penn State football recruiting, Penn State wrestling, anything Penn State really. We have Penn State basketball stuff because it was media days last week. That schedule will also be out Wednesday. I know the tip-off times for every game will be out Wednesday afternoon. BTN will release it, and we'll have it on our site shortly after. But for me and Dylan, that's another episode of the Penn State 365 podcast, signing off.